Welcome to Bible Talk Insight. We take stories from the Bible, look at what Bible scholars say, and really try to pull out the most, well, surprising insights for you.
That's right.
Today, we are diving into the book of Joshua. We're focusing on two pretty amazing stories, the story of Rahab and then this other group, the Gibeonites.
Yeah, and the theme connecting them is grace, or maybe even being surprised by grace.
Surprised by grace. I like that.
Well, these accounts, they look like straightforward military conquest stories on the surface. But when you dig in, they actually reveal this pattern of radical inclusion. It shows God consistently offering second chances.
Okay, even when maybe you think people don't deserve them.
Exactly. Even to outsiders, maybe even people using deception. It's about grace getting what you maybe haven't earned.
All right, so let's start digging into this unexpected grace. We should probably begin right at the beginning of Joshua's mission, shouldn't we? Why send spies in the first place? Especially given the history there.
Right. There's a lot of baggage attached to that decision.
Welcome to Bible Talk Insight as we continue our daily study with Real One. Okay, so we're in Joshua chapter 2, verse 1. Joshua sends out two men, spies. Seems like standard military stuff, right? Reconnaissance.
On the surface, yeah. But you have to remember the history. This mission was, it was absolutely loaded with the memory of national trauma for Israel.
The first time they sent spies, 40 years earlier.
Exactly. That mission was a disaster, led to fear, unbelief, and 40 years wandering in the desert. So sending spies again.
Yeah.
This was Israel's chance for a huge generational do-over.
And where they start from is significant too, isn't it? Shittim.
Oh, definitely. Shittim or Acacia Grove. For anyone reading this back then, that name would immediately bring two things to mind. First, like you said, the failure of the original 12 spies.
So literally starting attempt number 2 on the site of failure number 1. Wow.
Yeah. And second, Shittim was also the location of that awful incident with Balpur, remember, where the Israelites got involved in immorality and idolatry with Moabite women. It really destroyed them.
So it's like trying to launch this mission of faith from, well, cursed ground almost.
Pretty much. And it highlights something important. God promised them the land, yes. But that divine support didn't just cancel out human responsibility. They still had to act.
They still had to scout, make a plan, and this time act in faith, not fear.
Right. The contrast is stark. 12 spies came back terrified by what they saw. These two spies, they come back encouraged by what they heard.
Heard from Rahab, we'll get to her. But that shift from sight to hearing seems key.
It really is. And it connects to the bigger spiritual point here. Bible scholars often point out how God keeps offering chances. This idea of grace, it's about receiving life and opportunity even when your history says you deserve judgment.
So God's looking for any opening, any possibility to save someone, even if the starting point is messy.
That's the idea. And that search for salvation leads these two spies right into enemy territory and straight to someone you'd least expect.
We hope you'll join us on Bible Talk Insight and Answers from Scripture on Facebook for daily encouragement. And hey, subscribe to the podcast for the full enrichment. Sure.
Welcome to Bible Talk Insight as we continue our daily study with Real 2.
Okay, so the spies arrive in Jericho. And where do they go? To the house of Rahab. The text describes her as a harlot, or maybe an innkeeper.
Yeah, it's immediately a bit shocking, isn't it? Why would representatives of God's army go there? I mean, Jericho was this corrupt city marked for destruction.
But Rahab acts instantly. The king of Jericho finds out the spies are there, sends his men.
And she hides them, doesn't hesitate. She takes them up to the roof and hides them under the stalks of flax she has drying up there.
That's not passive hiding. That's active defiance. It's treason against her own city, her own king.
Absolutely. It's a radical choice.
But wait, some people might ask, didn't she lie to the king's men? How can God reward someone for lying?
That's a fair question. And Bible scholars often look at this contextually. Her lie is seen as, well, descriptive of her impossible situation, a desperate act for survival in a system that gave her few moral options. It's not that the lie itself is praised.
What is praise then?
Her faith, her courage, her decisive action based on that faith. Later books, like Hebrews and James, they point to her faith and her works specifically, welcoming the spies and sending them away safely.
And her faith, like we touched on before, wasn't about what she was seeing around her in Jericho.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It was based entirely on what she had heard. She recounts God's miracles from 40 years prior, drying up the Red Sea, defeating those kings, Sihon and Og.
And then she makes this incredible statement. She says, Jehovah your God, he is God in heaven above and on earth beneath.
Think about that. This is an outsider, a Canaanite woman, making this profound declaration of faith in Yahweh, A faith that, frankly, many in Israel struggled with. God saw that spark, that kernel of faith, despite her background, despite her lifestyle.
Finding value in unexpected places. Her faith wasn't just words, it led straight to action.
Exactly. And that action saved her and her family.
Remember to join us on Bible Talk Insight and Answers from Scripture on Facebook for daily encouragement. And please subscribe to the podcast for the full study. Welcome to Bible Talk Insight as we continue our daily study with Reel 3. So Rahab hides the spies, declares her faith. What happens next? She doesn't just let them go. She negotiates.
Right, she makes a deal. She asks them to show her, that's the Hebrew word. It means like loyal love, covenant kindness, because she showed it to them.
And she's not just thinking about herself. She asks for her whole family to be saved. Father, mother, brothers, sisters, everyone connected to them.
Which shows you she understood the stakes. She knew Jericho was facing cherem, total destruction under ban. She's looking for a way out, a loophole, based on this kindness she's shown.
And the spies agree, but there's a condition, right? A sign.
Yes, a very specific sign. She has to tie a scarlet cord, a scarlet rope or thread, in her window. That cord would be the visible marker for the invading Israelite army. Don't attack this house.
A scarlet cord in the window, that symbol, it feels really significant.
Oh, it is. Bible scholars immediately see a parallel here. It points directly back to the Exodus, to Passover night in Egypt.
Ah, the blood on the doorposts.
Exactly. The Israelites had to put the blood of the lamb on their doorposts. That was the sign for the angel of death, the destroyer, to pass over that house and spare the firstborn inside. Protection came from staying inside, under that visible sign of faith and obedience.
So in both cases, salvation depended on being inside, sheltered under a specific, visible mark.
Precisely. And think about who's claiming this promise now. It's Rahab, a Canaanite, someone technically under the sentence of destruction. She's accessing the covenant promises usually reserved for Israel.
Not because of her bloodline, but because of her faith.
Solely through her faith, an active, demonstrated faith. It underlines when the book of James says later, faith without works, without action, is dead. Rahab's work was receiving those messengers, protecting them, sending them out. The scarlet cord became the symbol of that active faith providing redemption.
Incredible. Available to anyone who acts on faith, regardless of where they come from.
That's the power of it. It transcends culture, transcends past sin.
We'll continue this study daily on Facebook, on Bible Talk Insight and Answers from Scripture. Don't forget to subscribe to the main podcast. Welcome to Bible Talk Insight as we continue our daily study with Reel 4. Now we shift gears a bit. We've seen Rahab's bold faith. Next up, we meet the Gibeonites and their approach to survival. Well, it's quite different.
Very different. Where Rahab was direct, even defiant, the Gibeonites chose deception, cunning. They heard about Israel's victories just like Rahab did, and they were terrified.
So fear is the motivator again, but instead of throwing themselves on Israel's mercy directly, they hatch this elaborate plan.
Right. Joshua chapter 9 describes it. They pretend to be ambassadors from a really distant country. They show up with supplies that look like they've traveled for weeks.
Moldy bread, worn-out wineskins, patched-up clothes, and sandals. The whole 9 yards.
Exactly. A very convincing performance. And like Rahab, they do acknowledge God's power. They mention hearing about God's fame, what he did in Egypt and to those other kings. So they recognize God's power.
But they use that knowledge to manipulate Israel. And here's where Israel makes a critical mistake.
A huge mistake. The text is very specific. It says the leaders of Israel, Joshua included, examined their provisions. And this is the key phrase, they asked, not counsel at the mouth of Jehovah.
They didn't pray about it. They didn't seek God's guidance.
Nope. They relied entirely on the physical evidence, on the appearance of things. They looked at the moldy bread and worn-out sandals and bought the story.
And based on that deception, they made a treaty.
Yes. The princes swore an oath, a sacred oath in God's name to let the Gibeonites live. They made a covenant with them.
Okay, but once they found out, and they did find out pretty quickly that the Gibeonites were actually local Canaanites, neighbors, they just say, hey, you lied, the deal's off.
That's the trap. An oath sworn in God's name, even if obtained through trickery, was considered absolutely binding. Psalm 15 even praises the person who swears to his own hurt and does not change.
Wow. So breaking the oath would have been seen as dishonoring God himself.
Precisely. It would bring judgment upon Israel.
Ugh.
So they were stuck. They either had to violate God's command to completely conquer Canaan, or they had to break a sacred oath made in his name. A terrible dilemma.
A dilemma born from their own failure to consult God in the first place.
Exactly. It shows how crucial that step is. But it also sets up another surprising display of God's process.
Find more encouragement daily on Facebook at Bible Talk Insight and Answers from Scripture. And please subscribe to this podcast.
Welcome to Bible Talk Insight as we continue our daily study with Reel 5. So Israel is caught. They swore an oath to the deceptive Gibeonites. They can't break it without dishonoring God, but keeping it seems to violate God's instructions about conquering Canaan. How does Joshua resolve this?
Well, Joshua's solution, which we find later in chapter 9, is actually quite remarkable. It manages to uphold both justice, in a sense, and the oath.
Okay, how?
The Gibeonites are spared, their lives are protected, honoring the oath. But because of their deception, they are put under a curse, they are sentenced to become servants, specifically hewers of wood and drawers of water for the house of my God.
Hewers of wood and drawers of water for the sanctuary, for the tabernacle and later the temple.
Exactly. And this is where the surprise, the grace really comes in. This curse, this sentence of perpetual servitude is simultaneously turned into a kind of blessing.
How is being a servant a blessing? Because of where they served. Being assigned to the house of God placed them constantly within Israel's worshiping community. They had proximity to God, access to the religious life of Israel in a way few outsiders did.
Huh. So the punishment actually integrated them into the very heart of Israel's relationship with God.
Right. It wasn't just political survival, it led to spiritual opportunity. And history shows they became incredibly loyal. Centuries later, in the book of Nehemiah, you see descendants of the Gibeonites helping to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem after the exile.
That's amazing. The curse became a pathway to belonging.
It really underscores the main theme we've been tracking. God's ultimate goal isn't destruction just for its own sake. As prophets like Ezekiel say later, God takes no pleasure in the death of the wicked, but desires that they turn and live. He's looking for ways to redeem, to include.
So Rahab, the outsider, welcomed through bold faith, and the Gibeonites, the outsiders, saved through deception, but then integrated through service. Both show this relentless grace.
Absolutely. And the ultimate surprise, going back to Rahab for a moment, Bible scholars point out her lineage.
Right, Matthew's genealogy.
She marries Salmon, becomes an ancestor of King David, and, incredibly, an ancestor of Jesus himself. The Messiah's family tree includes this Canaanite woman, formerly a harlot from a doomed city.
That just blows away any ideas about God only working through perfectly righteous people or specific nationalities.
It completely does. Grace makes no distinction based on race, background, or past sins. God used Rahab's bold faith and even worked through Israel's mistake with the Gibeonites to bring people into his plan. Even flawed faith, maybe fear-driven faith, could be used by God for redemption.
That's incredibly hopeful. If God's grace could reach Rahab and the Gibeonites in such dramatic ways,
Then surely his grace is available for you no matter your situation or past.
So we've seen how God's grace surprisingly reached these outsiders, Rahab and the Gibeonites. It really brings home the point that his mercy extends far beyond what we might expect or think is deserved, and that same grace is offered to you today.
And maybe a final thought to leave with you, some to chew on. Both Rahab and the Gibeonites acted, risked everything, based just on hearing about God's power, actions that happened 40 years before. They didn't wait for perfect proof or ideal circumstances. So the question for you might be, what truths have you heard? What knowledge about God do you already possess? And how might reflecting on their stories challenge you to act on that truth, maybe even to extend that kind of unexpected second chance, that grace, to someone in your own life?
That's a powerful challenge. A lot to think about there. Thank you for joining us for this Bible Talk Insight study on Joshua.
It's been great.
For more enrichment from the Bible and insights from Bible scholars, please make sure you subscribe to the Bible Talk Insight podcast wherever you're listening. And join us on Bible Talk Insight and Answers from Scripture on Facebook for daily encouragement. We look forward to studying with you again soon.